Actually, you probably have to go back over a century to begin telling the story, right? African Americans start out when they become essentially enfranchised. They do so because of the Civil War and Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, and therefore African Americans sort of by default become Republicans because that is the party of emancipation. The Republican Party, while it's in favor of emancipation, is not really a natural place to put African Americans, especially as the Republican Party goes through the late 1800s and early 1900s and goes through some sort of realignments inside itself and turns away from a possible progressive move with Theodore Roosevelt and becomes increasingly in the early 20th century more the party of white-collar business interest, upper-class interest. But now you get African Americans moving into the North where they can vote, and they begin to find the appeal of Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal very attractive. They begin increasingly to identify with the Democratic Party. Doesn't happen overnight, right? Partisan attachments take a while to erode during the late 30s and early 40s and late 40s to turn from a party that had been held hostage to states' rights in the South to one that was willing to embrace civil rights. You see that in the behavior of Harry S. Truman, right, who's going to integrate the armed services by executive order after World War II. You see that in the 1948 Democratic Convention. Then Senator Hubert Humphrey from Minnesota gets up and says, it's time for us to walk out of the shadow of states' rights into the bright sunshine of civil rights. At the same time, the Republican Party is struggling with its history of emancipation and civil rights. You get someone like Dwight Eisenhower, who says that integration, desegregation should go slow. That sort of personifies some of this movement of the Republican Party away from its traditional belief in civil rights and extending rights to African Americans. Especially by the mid-1960s, you get Lyndon Johnson, who's going to take the lead on the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And by that point, the ship is cooked, right? The Republican Party opposes it. Its standard bearer, Barry Goldwater, opposes it in 1964. He calls it a piece of communistic legislation. At that point, I think the door closes, right? At that point, African Americans who are politically active are Democrats.